Thanks, Patsy, and welcome everyone. If you have any issues with technology, and it happens to many of us, you can please use the chat feature, and if you click, you can chat it out to Astrid Leiden, who is joining us from the Department of Education, and she can help you with tech issues. We have everyone muted just to keep some of the background noise to a minimum. If you need to ask a question, you could raise your hand with the hand feature in the go-to training, or it might be better to chat it out if it's for everyone, or you can click the two and with the drop-down menu and choose someone that you would like to chat it to. We have a lot of documents that Patsy mentioned within the webinar material section. You can see there's links and PDFs and Microsoft Word documents that you can download. Many of these documents will be located also on the Atlas ABE website, and Liz Andress chatted out some of the links. So if you need to locate the most up-to-date materials, you can click there. Astrid chatted out that if anyone is needing assistance, you can contact her. Mohammed is saying that he can't hear anything, so Mohammed, you might want to click and check with Astrid, okay? So some of the people who will be joining us today, we have Todd Wagner, who is from the Minnesota Department of Education. He's our state director as well as the ABE supervisor. Astrid Leiden, who is also from the Department of Education. She is the Adult Basic Education Professional Development Specialist. Patsy Egan, who has introduced herself, she's a director of Atlas, Adult Basic Education Professional Development arm of ABE in Minnesota. I am here joining you today. My name is Heather Turngren. I am working with Atlas as the Adult Career Pathways Coordinator, and I've been working on coordinating the webinars throughout this year. Joining us as guests, we have Ron Fleischmann from Mankato Adult Education. He is the SCC Connect Supervisor and Instructor. We also have Cathy Grady joining us from St. Paul Public Schools Hub Center. She is the Assistant Supervisor. We really like to get wisdom from the field, and I think we all appreciate the time that they are doing to join us and share their wisdom. The objectives for our webinar today is after the webinar, you'll be equipped to describe a variety of strategy for building enrollments in ACPs, and these strategies will be coming from the field. We also encourage you to be chatting using the chat feature and go to training to hear about what you are doing. It is always a better webinar when you are participating. So please make sure that you're chatting out questions or strategies that work well in your program. We also want to make sure that you're able to identify what your program is already doing with building strong enrollments in adult career pathways, and that we hope you will join us and be able to chat those strategies out. We hope by the end that you'll be able to explain at least 2 ways to broaden and increase enrollments in ACPs, which are adult career pathways. But as Patsy pointed out earlier, this is nothing unique to only adult career pathways. We do know that there is lower enrollments statewide due probably most likely to the economy. So some of these strategies we feel that you can use in other aspects of your adult basic education programming. We also want to make sure that you can access additional resources, tools that will help you build strong enrollments for your adult career pathway programming in your area. Many of these tools, as mentioned before, are located within the materials section of the go-to training right now and on the Atlas ABE website. So some of the materials that you will find in the go-to training section is a worksheet example from Mankato Adult Basic Education. That's where Ron, one of our guest speakers, is from. He participated in the year-long Adult Career Pathways Program Development Cohort in its first year that we offered it in Minnesota. He and his manager, Karen Walters, worked out some of the materials that were part of that cohort, and we have an example so you can see how he used the materials from the cohort in building a strong enrollment for his adult career pathway. There is also the worksheet that Liz Andrus had created, which is built off of the Career Pathways Toolkit that is located in the materials section. There's also a Career Pathways checklist for some of you who may not be familiar with some of the steps for building strong adult career pathways in your program. We have element 3, which is specifically looking at recruitment strategies for your adult career pathways. That's a PDF located in the materials section. There's a lot of adult career pathways activities located in the materials section, again, as a PDF. Julie Dinkow, who was not able to join us today, she is from the Minnesota Department of Education. She is the transition specialist. She wanted to make sure that many of you could find something called the Marketing Materials Review Form. And this is a way that you can be looking at strategies to help you keep track of the marketing you're doing to build strong enrollments. And Ron, who is our guest speaker, has a link to something he's calling the second point of entry slideshow, and that is available in the materials section. So we have a lot of ideas and materials for you just at the touch of your fingertips, but you can find a lot of these also at Atlas. Todd was not able to join us today. He is not in the building at the moment. So I believe that Astrid Leiden is going to be talking about current challenges around adult pathway enrollments.
Yes, thank you, Heather. So good afternoon, everyone. This is Astrid Leiden from the Department of Education. And before we move into really digging into some of the guidelines and tools around building strong enrollments and setting enrollment goals, as well as hearing from our colleagues around the state about their strategies that they're using, we wanted to situate this and talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we've heard from you all around building adult career pathway enrollments. Before embarking on this webinar series, we surveyed the field, we talked to managers and to our regional transition coordinators, and one of the challenges that they wanted to spend some time with was building enrollments. And we know that this can be a challenge both in urban and in rural settings. So for those of you working in an urban environment, you may be struggling to recruit learners because there are multiple career pathway programs in a small geographic area. We also know that in order to run a career pathway, you need to recruit additional learners in addition to your general standard adult basic education programming. In a rural area, there can be some additional challenges. We know that people have struggled to build a cohort of learners around a particular career pathway. We also know that transportation is a real issue, as well as access to broadband internet access. So we can also see that learners may get employed during a career pathway. So in some ways, that's great that people are getting jobs, but they may not be the higher wage jobs that the career pathways are preparing them for. And this is a particular challenge we know with low unemployment rates overall. Our adult education enrollment is down across the state. And then folks have faced additional challenges of training partners discontinuing training or changing personnel. So we've designed a number of resources that Heather is going to be talking about to help you hone in and set some enrollment goals and develop very clear targeted enrollment and recruitment messages. And then we'll hear from some folks around the field in Mankato and in St. Paul about some concrete strategies that they've used to build their enrollments. And then I also do want to mention, for those of you working in rural settings, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be having another webinar focusing specifically on adult career pathways in one-room schoolhouse settings. So spending some additional time thinking about some of the challenges that those of you working in rural settings might be facing. Heather?
Thank you, Astrid, and thanks again for acknowledging that there are challenges, but there are also many solutions that can come about from these challenges. And we can talk about some of the materials that you can use to overcome the challenges and find your own solution. We have something called the Career Pathways Toolkit. It's a guide for system development. It was developed in 2015, or published actually, and it was published by the Department of Labor. So this is the US Department of Labor. And within that Adult Career Pathways Toolkit are 6 key elements to help you build a sustainable and what we call fully realized adult career pathway. You need to identify industry sectors and engage with employers. Here at our level of ABE programming, we're designing education and training programs. You're identifying funding needs as well as sources for the funding. You have to make sure that all of this career pathway programming is aligning to policies and programs in place. We need to measure system change and performance, making sure that our learners are moving along that career pathway. And part of that is by building cross-agency partnerships, whether that be with employers, whether that be with workforce centers or career force centers, or with college and other training providers. So this Adult Career Pathways Toolkit really helped lays the foundation for a lot of the professional development work that we have done here in Minnesota. Liz Andrus, who is with us today, and she's been chatting out some links to some updated materials, really helped develop the program development cohort that ran in 2018. We had another program development cohort run in 2019. I noticed by some of the people who are joining us, you were part of that career pathway cohort, and we thank you for joining us and learning from some of the other people who will be our guest speakers today who were also part of that cohort. If you take a look, one of the 6 key elements is the design and education and training programs. Part of that is making sure you have the critical information that you need to first identify, then select and serve target populations for your adult career pathway. From that Career Pathways Toolkit, we can focus in on what we call element 3.2. Part of that describes in detail how you can get that critical information needed for serving that targeted population. It can look at things like the economic status, where they live, where they reside, the educational goals that the students might have, their English proficiency, their literacy skills, as well as their numeracy skills, their work history, how culture might have impacts within that targeted population, and any special accommodations that you might need. Some of us might think about ways to maybe make that connection to possible community-based organizations or employers. So you need to maybe do some outreach and look at minority-based, private or nonprofit organizations that are within your area. There are many refugee organizations here in Minnesota that you could maybe reach out to, as well as our faith-based community organizations. We sometimes might overlook, but we have veterans who may want to join us working on that adult career pathway, so you can reach out to different veteran organizations. There are also organizations in your community serving our individuals and our students who might have different disabilities or different abilities. There's also those who have TANF fund, which is the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. Some benefits that could be SNAP benefits as well. There's also the organizations that serve our dislocated workers, as well as youth serving organizations. A lot of these organizations might have contacts for getting larger enrollment into our adult career pathways. You can find that Adult Career Pathways Toolkit Element 3.2 in the Materials section. Again, you can find it as well as on the Atlas ABE website. So you would click on Adult Career Pathways. You can click on then ACP Development Tools, which you'll note is the image on the left side of your screen. Within the ACP Development Tools, you have different links, and one is specifically for building strong enrollments. Liz Andrus is the curator of this website, and she really does a great job in keeping everything up to date. If you click into the Atlas website on strong enrollments, you can find different materials. There are materials on building strong enrollments, some guidelines, as well as examples, and a worksheet that you can use to help you do this work. There is a 7-step program or process involved in outlining what you might need to do to create this increased enrollment and build enrollment within your adult career pathways. We know it takes time, but with that careful time that you're doing in planning and creating processes, I think that the result can have really great benefits for your program in terms of having larger adult career pathway enrollments. So parts of the 7-step process, first you need to be setting up your enrollment goals. So maybe you have an adult career pathway in CNA training. You might have to decide what is the exact number of learners you need to make that a viable career pathway. Part of setting that enrollment goal, something that Astrid was discussing, is you might need to have a higher number than what is the minimum number needed. To help you set up those enrollment goals, you can look at step 2, which is identifying that target population that you want to bring in to increase that enrollment in your career pathway programming. You then need to design a program with curriculum and such to meet the needs of that targeted population. So for example, if you're looking at people with limited English speaking skills, you will have to design a program that will help build those vocabulary and speaking and listening skills. Step 4 is determining the recruitment sources and strategies. As I pointed out before, you might need to make the links to community-based organizations, workforce centers, and such to make sure that they can help you do the recruitment and can be a source to bring people into your programming. Step 5 is you need to be able to articulate the benefits of collaborating with those recruitment sources to make sure that they understand that we provide so much to help bring those students into employment and along the pathway of adult career pathway programming. You also need to be choosing appropriate marketing tactics or strategies. That's step number 6, and we're going to hear from our guests, Cathy as well as Ron, on strategies that they have used that work well within their adult career pathway programming. And also you need to be defining and develop student supports for persistence. For many programs, this might be trying to find some sort of navigation within your programming to make sure students stay within that program or adult career pathways and to support them along the way. The steps are outlined on the left of your screen. On the right-hand side of the screen is an example that our guest speaker, Ron Fleischmann from Mankato Adult Education, worked on with his manager, Karen Walters. So this was some of the work that they did for one of the assignments in the Adult Career Pathways program cohort. So you can see that they looked at target populations. They were looking at information sources where they could reach out to get a hold of these career pathway recruits. They looked at possible barriers that might prevent students from jumping into that career pathway, which is a way to help develop those supports to keep students persisting in that pathway. They also had to address different avenues on ways to do outreach to gather those students to enroll and then participate and persist in that adult career pathway. So I think it's great that you can see we have this 7-step process outlined in both the worksheet that you can download in the materials section, as well as in an example from the cohort that Ron participated in 2 years ago. You could look at the work that he's done. I know that Liz just chatted out that in step 5, the benefit statements are also about thinking from the target student point of view. We often share lots of information in marketing material, but we first need to attract them with the benefits that matter to them. This is great work to do with staff and even student advisors. And I agree with you, Liz. A lot of times we know it's great work, but we have to make it a hook to get the students to believe in that. I just found out that we have our ABE State Director, Todd Wagner joining us, and he can chime in to answer any questions later if it is needed. So if you have any questions, you can sure chat them out in the chat feature of the GoTo training. But again, a lot of these materials will help you in the planning to make sure that you can increase enrollment in your adult career pathway. This is an example of the worksheet. So you can see this was from the program development cohort, but the worksheet can really help you target those populations. So at the top on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see that you're targeting population. They give an example of people with low literacy skills. So you can create that benefit statement so that you are targeting those learners, help them gain the skills necessary for a good paying job. You can also look then at marketing tactics. Are you going to be using brochures, websites? Some of you might be using Facebook or Instagram. Are you going to go out to your local cable channels? I really like having the boxes with other, as we see many changes in social media in the way that we do recruitment and marketing. The recruitment sources, you can take a look at what is happening in your area, in your city, in your community. You could have other ABE programs, you could have human service agencies. Think about looking at secondary education dropouts, or I like to say stopouts, as well as working with faith-based organizations. So again, careful planning can really result in increased enrollment in your adult career pathway. Recruitment strategies and enrollment strategies will vary. So a lot of this depends. Could be in a small town, you could be in a medium-sized city, or you could be here in the metro area where I am. We also know that you might be working with small employers, medium employers, or sometimes large employers. Your strategies also have to take into account the different sectors that might come into play. You might be working with the trades, construction, manufacturing. Many of us focus on healthcare, which is one of the larger career sectors in Minnesota. Some of us might work with education, other people are working with business. So those strategies that you're using to increase enrollments will vary. And of course, we all have our unique challenges, but take what you learn and make sure that it fits to your own context. We would not want you to take a strategy that works in a small rural setting and use it in a large metro urban setting if it doesn't fit. So just make sure you're doing what fits and what makes sense for your own context. Some recruitment strategies that we have found are also located within our Adult Career Pathways Schoology group that I'll show you later. But here are some examples. We have in-house Adult Career Pathways marketing. If you look at the upper right-hand corner, that comes from Hub Center in St. Paul. They have a trifold with a number of brochures, so they are marketing their Adult Career Pathways within their current ABE programming. Some people have videos. Some programs use videos on their website. Other ABE programs have Adult Career Pathways brochures that they might mail out, or they have for people to grab maybe at the Career Force Center. Many programs use social media, whether that be Facebook or Instagram. Other people might be using career guides so that they can be showing the fully mapped adult career pathway programming to help students decide where they can pick up and join in on that career pathway. Many programs might have an adult career pathway orientation session to really engage students and make sure students are aware of the benefits and to make sure that they can be persistent and successful in their adult career pathway programming. Here you can see some examples. We have the International Institute of Minnesota based out of St. Paul. They have a career guide that works really well in helping students see where they fit in healthcare. Metro South ABE has a really great adult career pathway brochure. We have Rochester ABE with their video right on their website. Metro North ABE has a Facebook page helping students get information about career pathway programming. What I'd like to do is take a moment to make sure that you let us know what you guys are doing. So what adult career pathway recruitment strategies do you currently use? Or does your program have any strategies in place that you know about? We'd like to have you Use the chat feature within Go to Training. Tell me, what kinds of social media are you using? Do you use group text, or are any of you using the app called Remind to send students messages? Do you offer the face-to-face orientation sessions? Is there something that you're using that you would like to share with others that we have not thought about? Everyone, please use that chat feature. We know that it's so much more important to hear from the entire state than just giving some of these examples. Jill Rivard says, I have an email list and send out the brochure via email. That's great, Jill. You might want to let us know how you get those people on your email list, because I think that's another strategy. Teresa Zingery says she has targeted Facebook ads. And Teresa, could you mention perhaps the cost for that if they are targeted Facebook ads? Scott Heeland mentions they do group texts. They use the Remind app, which is another feature that you can use to send out group texts. Teresa says Matt is online too and knows the costs and other details. Okay, so Matt might be better. So Mohammed mentions they do a podcast. I like that idea, Mohammed. It would be great to maybe share the link about your podcast so other people can see that. Cindy out at Secord at Metro North says we post flyers around the community. That's great, Cindy. I'd like to hear about strategies on where you're posting those flyers, because sometimes we have the flyers, but we don't know where to post them. Allison Wilcox out at Metro South says they have a career pathway brochure. They do information meetings. They have a website, Facebook flyers, career pathway sector charts. Most successful is telling students to share with family and friends. That is so true, Allison. Word of mouth is what students rely upon. Teresa Zingery says partnerships with employers and the Job Training Center. That is so important, Teresa, to bring in recruitments into our career pathway programming. Jason Sellers says we are essentially the same as Metro South, so I believe you're doing many of those same things Allison mentioned. Anicia over at American Indian OIC, we do use Remind app. We use Facebook, Instagram, and targeted ads and flyers all over. We also have face-to-face information sessions. Great. Elizabeth Bennett, I know you're working with Anicia. You do outreach at community events, Facebook, Instagram, weekly information sessions. These are great strategies. Jill, thanks. You have put together a list of employers, school district, county, city, and nonprofit personnel in order to create that email list you mentioned. Meg up in central Minnesota, up towards St. Cloud, says we send information to referring counselors in vocational rehab services and other WIOA partners. That's a great strategy. Cindy at Metro North says we post flyers at the Veterans Center at local college and around colleges. Those are great strategies. Please feel free to chat out other strategies. I know that in my program, Minneapolis Adult Education, many times I might ask students to take a picture of a flyer and post it within the social media that they're using, whether that be Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok is something new now. So I'm asking the students also to be that word of mouth and to use whatever social media platform that they have. That has been pretty successful in my program, although I would agree with the person who was saying it's the word of mouth. But that could be the student's own word of mouth via their own social media platform. Allison says they have flyers at local career force working on career pathway student testimonial videos. Ooh, that will be great if you can share some of those in our Schoology group. Allison also says some employers are asking if they can tell their applicants about our program. I'm hoping that you say yes, yes, yes. Liz is loving the ideas of students disseminating on their own social media platforms. Yeah, Liz, I want the students to be doing their own word of mouth. Teresa mentions that they have newsletters to partners, and within those partners' newsletters, they're having them mention the adult career pathway programming. These are all very great ways to be spreading what I call the good word of what adult basic education can do and the benefits for our learners. Please feel free to continue to chat these out, but I'd like to hear from our guest speakers to find out exactly what they're working on. We have two guest speakers, as we mentioned before. We have Cathy, Grady, and Ron Fleischmann. We're going to go first with Cathy Grady. She's currently the Assistant Supervisor in St. Paul Public Schools, also known as the Hub Center. And I am going to let Cathy take this away, and I will just proceed, Cathy, as needed. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes, we hear you just fine.
Okay, excellent. Okay, hi everybody. I am here as a substitute for Karen Jardine, who is the real expert on all this here at Hub Center, but she couldn't be here today. So you have me. If there's any thing that I can't answer, that you have questions about, I'll certainly be more than happy to pass those questions along to Karen and get you an answer. At the Hub Center, we have many different career pathways programs, and you can see the list on your screen. We have advanced child development, building maintenance, CDL permit, which is commercial driver's license, nursing assistant, intro to small business, which is our newest project, which is very exciting. I can tell you more about that. Medical office prep, parapro, which is for preparing students to be EAs and TAs in the school districts and to take that test. Medical, oh, I already said that, Serve Safe, which we partner with the St. Paul Public Schools to make sure that people who want to move up, as well as our students too, but people who are already working in the nutrition services area, if they want to move up into management positions there, they need to pass the Serve Safe test. So we have that class. And then boiler license. It's actually called a special low pressure boiler license. So that and building maintenance go well together. We're lucky that we serve about 600 students every day at Hub Center and 150 students at Hub at Harding. So we have a nice audience already to see and enroll in the courses that we offer. The courses are, the class schedule is published in a flyer with all the different class listings, and I can share this if you're interested, but all the different class listings, when the classes are going to be. They're managed enrollment, and they happen during certain periods of time during the year. Some are 14 weeks, some are 12 weeks. And then the TABE and CASA scores that are needed for students to enroll. We partner with Goodwill Easter Seals on, in addition to these classes I listed here, we partner with Goodwill Easter Seals on construction training, soldering, and business pathways. And we just are starting a partnership with Ramsey County Workforce Solutions on women in coding. And we're going to be providing the ABE teacher support and instruction for that. Can you go to the next slide? I'm going to move on to the next slide. How do we set enrollment goals? Well, I just went through this actually. It was kind of fun, and I talked with Karen about it. And this was for the small business course, which is a P2P grant, where we are working with Neighborhood Development Center, which is a small business support and training center, and Goodwill Easter Seals for the navigation piece of it. And then we're teaching the small business concepts and providing some small business experience through a coffee cart that we are opening here at Hub Center, which is a lot more time and work than I ever expected, but it's going to pay off big in lots of coffee, I'm sure. And the students are so engaged in it. It's really exciting to see. So anyway, where was I going with that? Oh, so with that, actually, yes, I had a point. With that, I sat down and I said, how about 15 students per cohort? And Karen said, how about 12? And I was like, oh no, but I want 15. And I'm so glad we set it at 12, partly because not only do the students have to be interested in the career pathway, but they also have to meet a whole bunch of other requirements in order to be counted towards the grant. So we have about 14 students in the class, and only about 9 are actually going to be able to be counted for the grant. Maybe that's more information than you needed, but that's a reality as well for some of these grants. So the way we set enrollment goals is, what do we think we, how many students do we think we can get? What did we say in the grant? And then for non-grant funded programs, we listen to our students, we listen to what they're interested in, and then we basically just go by what we think we can get in the class. And enrollment varies a lot. Sometimes we have 8 students in a class, and sometimes we have 20, and we don't really always know why. So like our last introduction to nursing assistant class was huge, and this one that just started is small. So I think maybe we served a bunch of people. We served the market that was there, and then maybe there are not as many people now who are interested, but hopefully the next cohort will be big again. Let's see. So who is our target population? When our students come to Hub Center, they go through an orientation, and we ask them about their career goals. We put them in SID under career interest, and so then when we're trying to recruit a new cohort for one of our ACP classes, we pull a report of students who said that they were interested in a particular field that we offer, so say nursing. If they meet the eligibility score, then we call them and contact them or email them about the class. We speak directly to supervisors in our facilities and nutrition services areas at the school, so we're lucky to have that connection. We talk to principals in our K-12 schools about EATA training, the parapro training. There's a lot of interest in human resources from St. Paul Public Schools in that class, and they're happy to promote it because they need those folks working. Let's see. Yeah, so let's see. How do we set enrollment goals? This is just another slide in the same topic. The strategies that we use are basically, so we had a during the week class for building maintenance, and it was very, very low. There was low attendance, and we realized that the reason, we work with Marsden Building Maintenance on the class too, and the reason was that many of those people were working during the week and they just couldn't come. So we decided to try the class on Saturdays, and now we have 30 students enrolled. So that's been a huge success, and we're always, like I said, listening to what our students tell us about what they can and can't do and when they're available, and making adjustments accordingly. So we've offered nursing assistant classes in the evening, and then we also offer online options as well for the parapro class. We've got a course in Admentum that addresses some of those concepts, so students can attend class but also work online. We also have some students who we work with one-to-one. So if, say, a student really needs to get their ServSafe license before they can move up in nutrition services, we'll actually have a teacher work with them a couple hours a week and to get them the skills they need for that class. So it's kind of a more individualized approach as well. Of course, our goal is always to have a nice big cohort for every class that start at the same time and end at the same time, but that's not always the case. However, we do celebrate that when that happens. Let's see. Social media. Question about social media. Actually, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong slide. What specific strategies in marketing tools are used, and are they effective? We use MailChimp to promote classes as we are recruiting for them before they start up. And we have about 100 or more people who are on that list, and they tend to be social service providers and others who work with the target population. Case managers can print out flyers from those MailChimp ads to give to their participants. We highlight classes, graduating, and successes, and you know, when a guest speaker comes in and things on Facebook, on our Facebook page, and the Facebook posts where we show a group of students with their certificates are always really well received. And then we advertise when new classes will be starting on those Facebook posts. We also provide flyers to stakeholders, and we have an existing brochure that's been around for a long time that lists kind of the general offerings that we provide in terms of the career pathways area. So those sort of list it generically. We also use Blackboard Connect. Just recently, we got access to Blackboard Connect to do robocalling. I figured, well, if St. Paul Public Schools can call me all the time about my children, why can't St. Paul schools call students about, you know, the next career pathway opening or whatever. So we will do robocalling, and it's really nice. We can pull a list from SID and then sort of target our audience and just send them a message on their phone, and they generally respond really well. Sometimes they call back and say, "You called me," and they haven't listened to the message, but it's kind of fun. We're learning about that. We're also let's see, we also use, I may have said this, Remind, the Remind app, and we have a text number, so we invite people to text us, and that comes straight to my email, which, you know, may need to change if we start getting more and more texts. But, you know, if I'm on my computer and it's the weekend and I get a text from a student asking about a certain class or asking about registration, I just always respond because it takes 2 minutes and it's good customer service, and generally I feel like it will lead to either good word of mouth or having that student actually come in. So why not? We are also starting, and we haven't done this for our career pathways classes yet, but we're starting Facebook ads. We're going to actually pay for ads. We had never done that before. And just yesterday, we boosted a post. It was for our GED online program. We boosted a post that I had posted a year ago, and our communications person at the district, at the community ed office, emailed me this morning and said already 100 people had clicked onto our GED online page. So that was pretty exciting. Let's see. I just want to make sure I'm getting everything. Oh, one other thing. So the next slide is what's social media. I already talked about that a little bit. And we are actually working with Bethel College. We get some volunteers from Bethel College, and we've gotten in. We've kind of built a relationship with their business area, their business department, and so for the past 2 years, this will be the second year, we've had seniors who are majoring in business and marketing spend about a month or two doing a project for us. And so I just got out of a meeting actually this morning with a group of young people who are going to design some sort of outreach project for us, and we discussed TikTok. So that's timely that people were talking about that earlier. So, you know, we'll think about doing something for TikTok. I really don't know how it works, but we'll figure it out. And then also we're going to hopefully do more Facebook ads and then post more. Actually, have an Instagram account. We haven't had one, but I think it's time. It's probably too late, but hopefully not. Okay, so I'm on to how did you focus on internal recruitment? And how do we focus on external recruitment? So internally, the teacher who teaches the class will go into the level appropriate classes during the day, during the peak times of day here, and talk to the students about the class that's upcoming. And that's really the best way that we recruit students. I mean, word of mouth and people who are already here, that's kind of the bird in the hand group of people. We make announcements on the loudspeaker about upcoming classes. We have the table, the picture of that little table and poster board that you saw earlier in the slide deck. And we have the teacher sitting there at that table as students come in at certain times when we're really trying to recruit, do some intensive recruitment. And then we work really closely with our external partners, Career Force, Goodwill, consortium members, to make sure that the word is out there that we're offering this program. And the tools and resources that have been useful are, being consistent about what we offer, continuing to offer the same classes as long as they're still a fit with the economy and with the needs of our students. Word of mouth, and having a good product, just making sure it's a good class, a good teacher. That really, I'm sure everyone is aware, the teacher can make a huge difference. A teacher who is friendly and excited about student success, which is most of our teachers in ABE, but certain ones have a cult of personality is what I like to call it, and they really get students sticking with the class and enrolling. So yeah, we also put out a job training classes just flyer that has all the classes I told you about earlier. It's a grid, and it's got all the classes, all the requirements, the location, just a brief description of each class. So I think that's it. I'm going to go back. I was looking at my slides because I had my notes in there, but now I'm back to the webinar. So if anyone has questions or takeaways, I'm happy to try to answer them. And if I can't, I will pass them along to Karen.
Thanks, Cathy. We ended up on the slide about tools and resources that have been useful, and you were talking about consistency. I think we all have agreed that the word of mouth within students works the best, and I really like that idea that you have the ACP teacher who has that information going into the classrooms. I think that works really well in my program. I also think what you finally state here, you have to have a good product, otherwise no one's going to buy it. So I think what you are doing at Hubs is a great product. Some other people were chatting out. Karen Walters said she really liked the idea of documenting the ideas in SID, where students express a certain career interest, and then you can be pulling those reports. And I'm not sure if we have time in this webinar to go through that, but we'll talk about an event that we're having on May 1st, and perhaps we could invite Jenny from SID, I call her Jenny from SID, to talk more on how to use SID to be pulling that information about career pathways. I have some people here. Liz Andrus said that she's going to take a note of many of these strategies and post them in the Adult Career Pathways Schoology group, and I thank you so much, Liz. Let's see, people were asking about not using a personal phone, but with Remind, it's not showing your personal phone number. We use that in my program, and students, they contact me so much more now that I use Remind than ever using voicemail or email. People were asking about TikTok, and I personally find that students in my class who are younger, and I mean maybe 25 and younger, use TikTok, which is a sort of video-based app, or they're using Snapchat. I find people who might be a little bit more 30 on up are using Facebook, and I notice this because I make sure that they connect with me with Remind, and I use the Remind app, and then I just take note of what sort of apps they have to see about that. Liz posted some information from NPR about TikTok here. People are saying thank you. And if anyone has a question that they would like to chat out to Cathy, right now would be a great time. Again, as she mentioned, the person who works with a lot of the adult career pathway programming at St. Paul and for the St. Paul Transitions region is Karen Jardine, and she was not able to join us as she is out of town today. So we really thank Cathy for stepping in and taking this on. I appreciate that, Cathy. but if there's not a question that Cathy can answer, she can surely bring that along to Karen. People are saying, thank you, Cathy, thank you. It would be wonderful, Cathy, if you joined our Adult Career Pathway Schoology group and you could maybe post some of those flyers and such that you talked about. I took some notes about that Facebook boost ad because I don't think they're that much money, but if you had that many responses from one Facebook boost, that is really great. Now to see if students come into the classroom is the next step, but I think that is a great recruitment strategy in all areas of adult basic education programming. We'll move along to our next guest unless someone has an urgent question they'd like to ask Cathy. Again, you could chat it out, or if you raised your hand, we would unmute you in the GoToTraining dashboard. If not, we're going to thank you, Cathy. I believe you may have had a time crunch, so if you're not able to stay with us, we can take note of some of the questions that might be chatted out. If not, I'm going to turn it over to my friend Ron Fleischmann. Ron Fleischmann comes to us from Mankato Adult Education. And at this time, Ron, I'd like to turn off my end of the microphone and leave it up to you, okay?
All right, sounds good. Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me just fine. I'm Ron Fleischmann. Like it says, I've worked at Mankato Adult Education now. This is my 6th year. I don't quite know how that happened so quickly. I am formerly the Fast Track or Adult Career Pathways Program Supervisor, rebranded recently to SCC Connects Supervisor, and I'll discuss that in a little bit. Okay. Thank you for taking my picture off. Mankato Adult Basic Education serves about 820 adult learners. We have pathways in healthcare and manufacturing. My talk will be heavy on manufacturing because that's the area that I work in. Okay, how we set set enrollment goals. First of all, I have to say that it is probably Karen Walter's fault because she keeps saying, all right, we have to work on our hours. How do we get our hours up? Those kinds of things. And keeps that always in front of us, which I think is a good idea. Particularly, we're looking at increasing enrollment bridge to integrated program in healthcare and manufacturing. We did develop a feeder program, an on-ramp program that deals with sort of our higher level ESL students and those groups to start them thinking along career pathways and doing some of that exploration work. We've worked pretty hard on increasing partner referrals. That's part of the reason for the rebranding. But also we're working pretty closely with groups like the House of Hope and our prison system and our POs and those kinds of folks. And then specifically, I'm going to spend most of our time talking about what I call a second point of entry, specifically for our welding program, but Karen and I have also talked about possibly expanding that to another area as well. Okay, these are our target populations, unemployed or specifically underemployed. We have loads of people there. First generation college, non-traditional students. Those are all of our, basically what you call our cut scores, or at least our, the area where we serve folks. Sort of shows the on-ramp into bridge and how they kind of build on each other. I have to say that CASAS is a relatively new bird for me because I've always dealt with TABE. And those of you that are currently dealing with TABE realize that it has become a bit more laborious, but I'll show you in a little bit how well worth it it is. Okay, so setting the enrollment goals, the first thing we tried to do is we've rebranded. We used to be Fast Track, and that dates way back previous to me. And then we changed because Fast Track with a C had been purchased by somebody else. We changed it to Fast Track with a CK. And then more recently, we started thinking it isn't faster. Matter of fact, it's about a month and a half longer. So then we decided what really is it that we do? And we help connect our students to the South Central College programs, including assistance with their FAFSA, assistance with their signing up for programs and classes, certainly in-class assistance and those kinds of things. So it really was a little more specific to what we do. And also to encourage our college to think of us not as an ABE program, but as a college program that ABE is used to support. Then, that was my phone, everybody. Then we have partners in adult career pathways supervisor visit and teach portion of the on-ramp. So this last year I taught the month of July in on-ramp. This summer I'll be teaching on-ramp both in June and July. So the students will start to get a relationship not just with, oh, that guy that comes in once in a while to present to us with his flyers, but actually gets to know me as a support to them in their education. And then we wanted to work on expanding a second point of entry. So what we've done is this. Up at the college 6 years ago, they restarted their welding program. They had one for years and it sort of disbanded and disappeared, and our area partners were clamoring for it. So 6 years ago, the college started a welding program, and they sort of, I guess, threw me into that. And I had been working as a MIG welder just previous to working with ABE. So it was certainly a comfort zone for me. So now looking 6 years back on it, we're on our 12th class. We want to run a 1 semester welding program. So in 4.5 months, we go from students who haven't touched a welder to students who are employed at about $20 plus an hour. So one of the things that we tried to do then is, because we were struggling in our bridge program getting any more than, I think our largest bridge for manufacturing was about a dozen, is we worked with the instructor up at the college and said, if you want me to be more involved, let's tab your entire class. So we tabbed the entire welding class, and it was somewhat frightening how many actually qualified for adult basic ed services. In our current class, we have a maximum enrollment of 20, and 17 of them have qualified to receive ABE support. So all of a sudden, I have a cohort of students, 17 of them, when they all show for class, that we can provide adult basic ed services on a daily basis. And really the driving factor was Ron needs a job. We needed to find a way to make my position a little more self-supporting. And to date, since the semester starts, so it'd be August, I've been able to log in close to 6,000 hours. So was it successful? Yeah, I sure think so. So one of the things that we're looking at is, okay, now we've got a second point of entry. How could we expand that into our P2P grant? Well, it's a little late for me to catch them for a bridge once they've already started college. But what we can do is this last semester, we gave ourselves a week and a half to tape and screen all of our welding class. And the carrot for them, there's always that question, what's in it for me as a student? Their carrot for them was that if they went into our grant, that we would pay for all of their personal protective equipment, all of their gear. So they get a welding pliers and welding gloves and safety glasses and a pair of 05 safety glasses for oxyacetylene welding and so on, and a welding jacket. So this was our first semester doing that, and I believe there are 13 of our students that are actually in our grant program, which is a nice boost to that. So we're learning a lot. Were they effective? Yes. We're learning that we need to streamline some of our paperwork for that quick of a turnaround to get everyone through the program. Social media, we do use, I'm old, I'm obviously over 30, so we use Facebook, but word of mouth is probably our greatest tool that we use. We do focus on high demand programs, so welding, machining, mechatronics, HVAC. For us, we found a dedicated cohort of students, which would be through the one semester welding program, that we can go all the way through the semester with. Our max is 20 students. If you know the college student, there's a max, which is 18 students, and then they'll allow 2 override students. So we have had an override of students in our welding program every semester, all 6 years. So there's definitely the need for it. We have a waiting list every semester. We have to turn students away every semester for welding, which, by the way, is also a great marketing tool. If you're able to say, boy, you better register earlier, you're going to miss out on this, it's a great way to market your program. So one of the things that we had when you deal with the problem of having to turn students away is students don't necessarily say, okay, I'll see you then in 6 months. So we've developed a back-to-back diploma, so where they can go 1 semester of machine tool technology and then 1 semester of welding. And it's a machine tool technology welding diploma. So it just simply makes them more valuable to our partners. Internal and external recruitment. Internal, we really needed a dedicated buy-in from our welding instructor, and it was kind of nice because we both started the program together. We've been working side by side, and frankly, we're best buds, so that helps a great deal. So when I say, hey, I'd like to do this, he says, okay, make it happen. So that's kind of the relationship we built up there. Strong relationships with business partners. In pay, when it comes to our business partners, we've actually gone to our welding partners and said, if you want us to continue to work closely with you and have access to our students, you're going to have to bump your starting pay. And those are sort of tough conversations, but we've really been supported in that. Obviously, the in-class help that I can give is hopefully pretty helpful for them. We've built a new shop this last year. We had received some money from the state of Minnesota to add on and build a new shop. And our president came to us and said, well, you can have a small shop. And we said, well, we need a bigger shop. She said, you're not going to need to raise money for that. So we went around to our business partners, and in a couple of short months, they kicked in $200,000 cash to help us get this welding shop up and running. So they're very dedicated to the process as well. And then we also give them access to our students, access to our class. We have their lead welders come in and spend time in the booth with each of our students, teaching some techniques. They also come in and assist us with mock interviews, which sometimes end up being not mock interviews at all, they're actual real interviews. Our students are our best ambassadors. Current students, past students, I still hear from them on basically a almost daily basis and keep in touch with them. And Facebook posts, we have a system through our college where we'll be taking some pictures. For example, this morning we toured one of our business partners and spent some time with them, and hopefully can get those uploaded pretty quickly and spread that word around. I have a question over here. How do you prioritize the people interested in welding class and the wait list? It is first come, first served. So what we do, it has been challenging because sometimes when they live, we also have another welding shop in Faribault, and if they live in that area, then we encourage them to attend there to make more room on our list, or to take machining first. So that's kind of how we've dealt with that. And test scores have never been a part of making that priority list. What tools and resources? You're going to get sick of hearing this. Rebranding, of course, I'm anxious to see how that works as far as South Central College more fully adopting us and promoting our program, but I think we're already off to some good starts that way. We have a tremendous career force person who serves as our navigator for our on-ramp and our bridge to integrated program, and she's had to take a big lion's share of new ideas. So when Ron comes up with this great brain idea, hey, why don't we? That means, hey, why don't you? And means a lot more work for her, and she's been great that way. My relationship with our welding instructor is very important. Our relationships with our partners is extremely important. Great example this morning as we were touring our business partner, I pulled their engineering and technology director aside and said, when you get a student from our program, are there some things that you wish they were better trained in? And so we had some conversations on blueprint reading, and I said, you know, you do some blueprint reading training here. I'd love to have the materials that you have so we can do a better job preparing your future workers. And so we're starting those conversations as well. Our relationship with our past students, we have a grand opening for our new welding shop, and every single past student for the last 12 classes is invited to attend that. And then also starting to build some relationships with our high school shop teachers. A lot of times we focus on the high school resource counselors, those kinds of folks. But in the end, certainly for our welding program, it's the shop teachers that contact us and say, hey, you know, I've got this student, maybe not the best reader, but boy, can they weld, or they're really interested in welding, but their math skills are a little bit weak. And so we spend time on that. So, and that's, I think, well spent.
Ron, I don't mean to interrupt, but your supervisor has to leave and she's wondering if she can make a quick statement.
Of course you can, Karen. I won't cut you off.
Karen, are you able to unmute yourself?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes, maybe a little bit louder.
Whoops. Okay, so I have to go pick up my son, but I think it's important what Ron is talking about. The biggest point that I think is important to remember is that we really need to have a lot of different entry points for people along the pathway. And one thing that we've always focused on at Mankato ABE is the bridge entry point. Then we started focusing on an on-ramp entry point, which is down in those cut scores where they can't quite get into the bridge because they're not meeting the floor scores to get up into the bridge. And now what Ron is describing is an entry point at the integrated section of programming where, you know, right now we're not getting people in our bridges. People are working, they want to move up, but they don't have a lot of time to spend or enough time in a day to add in a bridge class and more work. So we have a big group of on-ramp people that are below the cut scores to get into the bridge, and they're working. We don't have very many at all in bridge right now because of the economy. But the point where we're catching people that Ron's explaining is when they are already enrolled in college. So we have this phenomenon going on where people are getting into college, having very low scores. Like he said, everybody's qualifying for ABE, but we don't see them. They don't somehow get into the bridge. They come last minute and walk in the door at SCC or get on a wait list, and we try to call them and no, I can't do a bridge. I don't have time for that. So I think in order to sustain programming at this point with the economy being the way it is, it's really important to think about catching them at different points. And Ron is able to do that because he's up on campus and he's got those relationships with those instructors, and he can catch people at the point that they're in. For our navigators and our partners that want to enroll people into WIOA and want to pay for their tuition, it's too late to do that. They're already in. But that doesn't mean that they don't need help, because now they're in college and maybe haven't put a ton of thought into it, and now they're there and they're not skilled. They need math, they need support. Their cars break down, their daycare falls through, and we're there to catch them and make sure that they're making it through that semester. And I'm hoping, Ron, you're going to tell them how good the graduation rates are for those two machine tool and welding programs, because they're really good. But that's one thing I think is really important to think about, is if you're going to sustain something over time or even be able to get grants over time, you've got to think of ways to get people enrolled at different points along that pathway. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you, Karen, so much for sharing your pieces of wisdom. I'm hoping that we can capture these and share them in our Schoology Adult Career Pathways group so that we can maybe continue the conversation about various entry points, and I think that is really important. Ron, there were also a couple of other questions, and I'm hoping that we can get to this because our next slide is about the takeaways or the questions. We had Mohammed earlier ask a question about what is the difference between welding versus hand soldering. And also he works for an agency that has hand soldering training for a total of 5 weeks of training, and he'd like to know how to become a partner. And I just love to see this collaboration between folks on the webinar. I'm wondering if you could help address Mohammed's questions.
Sure, I'm sorry I missed your questions earlier. What's the difference between welding and hand soldering? Actually, they're very much related. It is a type of welding. At our welding program, we do all sorts of, we do oxyacetylene welding, which would be cutting and brazing and soldering and those kinds of things. So they're included in our welding program, but we cover it all in 4.5 months. So for us, it's kind of a wide smattering of welding techniques. So, and can we partner? Absolutely. I'd love that. If you look at my other slide presentation that I included in this talk, there's contact information for me there. So feel free to reach out and I'd be glad to assist with that. Oh, and Karen asked me about if I would share our retention rates and our success rates. For our bridge programs, we've probably had, I'm going to guesstimate about a 75% success rate of people starting bridge to actually going all the way through and being employed in their field. For our second point of entry students, these are students that have already chosen specifically welding. Like I said, of our 20, 17 of them qualify for adult services. Of those, I'm going to say that we'll probably end up with a good 15 that will end up working in their field. And of the ones that graduate from welding, we have a over 93% placement rate.
Ron, that is fantastic. I know earlier Todd Wagner jumped in to say the rebranding, the SCC Connects was a great strategy. He also was asking about the funding source for that Career Force Navigator. And Karen Walters was able to chime in and say it was paid for with P2P funds. So I think it's just another way to point out these P2P grants can help pay for many of the items that perhaps your program can't. May I ask you a question, Ron? Is that how you were able to pay for that personal protective equipment as well?
Yes, yeah. We knew we would have to have a carrot, something that students that are already enrolled in college would go, well, then why would I also do all of this? And so that's why the timing is so important. If we can get that accomplished in that first week and a half, then we can provide all of their personal protective equipment through that grant.
That's wonderful.
Yes, and then for other students, depending on their barriers and their needs and so forth, they also get other things that they may qualify for as well.
Now, while we're discussing, Ron, some of the questions and other chats that people have expressed in GoToTraining, I'm going to encourage other people to chat out a takeaway, or if you have another question for Ron's presentation. I'd like to point out, Ron, that within the materials section is the link to that other PowerPoint that will have your email address should Mohammed or others want to connect with you. I think you have a couple of people just saying that you have really impressive results and that what you're doing, that welding pathway, seems to be really wonderful. You guys are doing a really great job in placement, Mohammed chats out, but if folks have questions, I believe we have enough time that we can take a few. You would just need to either raise your hand or you can use the chat feature and we can read them for others to see. Ron, I really enjoyed hearing about that second point of entry. I think it's a great strategy that you're using. Again, for those students, it's almost like a targeted enrollment strategy you have. Students who have decided they want that pathway and they would never come for our ABE services because they're already at the college. That is fantastic.
Thank you. For those of you considering whether that might be good for healthcare, understand that welding is a pretty definite cohort. You have all the same classes together, whereas in healthcare, a lot of times healthcare ends up being a shotgun approach. There are a couple of classes that are common to healthcare careers and then others where they can just kind of go off on their own. So you won't have as strong a cohort necessarily.
Okay, those are good things to think about if other people are going to go that way. Ron, right now we don't have any other questions, but if they do come along, I would be more than happy to chat them out. I would like to just give you a great Thank you for presenting and sharing your strategies with the larger ABE community in Minnesota.
My pleasure. Hope to talk to some of you folks.
Yes. With that in mind, I'd like to have you guys think about ways that you can begin building the strong enrollments for your current adult career pathway programming. Some of the strategies we talked about begin with finding resources. So where are the resources that you can use to build these strong enrollments? I've been pointing out a lot of the resources are going to be found at the Atlas ABE Adult Career Pathway area, and that could be starting with the Adult Career Pathway Checklist. This is a self-assessment tool that you or someone within your program can use to determine where you are in creating that adult career pathway. You can find it in the materials section as well as in the Atlas ABE Adult Career Pathways resources, but it's a great beginning point to see where you are. Again, at atlasabe.org, we have Liz Andrus, who is the curator for all things related to adult career pathways. There's a lot of tools and resources. You would go to the website, atlasabe.org. You can click on resources, and then you can see the adult career pathways resource with the gear. It's kind of the maroon color. And once you're there, you can find all sorts of materials. I'd like to point out within the materials section is a step-by-step process for you to enroll in what we call the Adult Career Pathway Schoology Networking Group. This is a group that I moderate, and other people who are on this webinar have joined. You can post questions, you can share resources that you have, you can view links and materials, many of which are the materials that I pointed out earlier, those videos and brochures. You can also connect with other adult career pathway programming in Minnesota. So within the materials section is how you can enroll. Please post questions. That networking group is only as strong as you make it. So I'd really encourage you to post questions and resources. Within that group is a link called, I think it's called promotional materials. So if you have brochures and such that you would like to share, please send them to me. I'm Heather Turngren, and I will be happy to post them. So here are the steps to join in, and again, it's the Adult Career Pathways Networking Group. You can go along the side, there's resources, and it says ACP and MN ABE promotional materials, and I've been just adding links as people send them to me, okay? Ron states, thank you, Ron. I did not pay you to say that, but you said it's a great opportunity to be part of the ACP cohort, and it's well worth it, and it's a great way to organize your materials, so thank you. If you have any questions about the resources, you're more than welcome to chat them out. I can also take them. People are saying that they can't hear me. However, I feel that on my end, things are working. Okay, you're more than welcome to chat out or to raise your hand, and we can answer your questions about resources. Thanks, you guys. From my end, it's showing that the sound is working, so thank you. I think you guys can hear me. Okay. I'm going to turn this over. We have Patsy Egan talking about some other future adult career pathway events.
Great, thank you. I appreciate all the information that was shared on today's webinar, and it looks like sound was lost for maybe a couple people, but most of us could still hear you, so we're not sure. But thank you so much for joining us. Thank you especially to Cathy and Ron for stepping up and joining the webinar and sharing specifics about their programs. We do, as we finish up today, and I know we only have a couple of minutes, want to share a couple of things coming up in the professional development world. So I'll go ahead and just direct people's attention. If you haven't seen it already, there's a sheet in the materials section that Heather put together called 2019 Adult Career Pathways. Let me see what the full title is, activities, and that has information on how to get in Schoology and then upcoming webinar dates and such. So for sure you'll want to take a look at that. And of course, everything is already listed in the events calendar. A few things to draw your attention to here are the regional events. The first one is coming up on March 6th here at Hamlin. It's the Metro Regional event. So if you're working in the Metro area, take the time on Friday, the 6th of March to join us for an all-day event. Lots of concurrent sessions related to any number of things, including, of course, career pathways work. Thursday and Friday, March 26th and 27th, will be in Grand Rapids, and then at the South Regional in Mankato on April 17th. So I hope those are all in your calendars. There were a couple of webinars we mentioned earlier. We want to be sure these are on your radar. There is a one-room schoolhouse specific webinar on Tuesday, March 3rd at 2 o'clock. And this one is going to be specifically about creating adult career pathways in a one-room schoolhouse environment. So we have 3 panelists who are going to be joining us. Jill Rivard from Hiawatha Valley, I know she was on the webinar today. Seymour Lesk from Marshall, as well as Michelle Walton from the Northwest Indian Community Development Center will be joining us, as well as our facilitator, Elizabeth Bennett, to share how this plays out in a one-room schoolhouse setting. It is, of course, a slightly different context than what some of us work in the metro area, or what some of us are in mid-sized cities. In a one-room schoolhouse, how do you make this happen? What are some tools and strategies to make career pathways happen in those contexts? So tune in for that. And then we have our 5th and final webinar in this series, the Adult Career Pathway Specific Series, is on May 14th. So coming up, May 14th is sounding pretty good after a cold morning this morning in all across Minnesota, but May would be lovely and a good day to tune into our webinar on navigation in adult career pathways. So that'll be coming up in a couple of months. And then another May event we want to be sure is on your calendars is Friday, May 1st. We will be at MDE in Roseville. The main goals of this institute, it's a full day event, and the goals are to network with those working in adult career pathways programs, and also to network with people around specific career sectors. So we'll probably have some time set aside for people to connect specifically if you're working, for example, in healthcare or in manufacturing or in another related field. And then also to access concrete tools and strategies to either get started with a career pathway or to move forward, and develop some peer mentoring relationships and receive some peer support. The audience is both teachers and managers, so we want to be sure that's clear that managers, of course, are welcome, and teachers, of course, are welcome. If you are working around career pathways in your program, this event is for you, and so we very much want you to be involved. There will be some sessions that are specifically targeted at more on the manager programming kind of sphere, as well as some sessions that are more specifically teacher focused. So plan to join us at MDE for a full day event on May 1st. And then just to wrap up, I want to thank everyone again, in particular Heather, for wrangling all of us and getting all of the slides and information and materials together for the webinar, as well as our guest speakers today and our colleagues at the state office who were able to chime in as well. So thank you so much. I'll leave it up to Heather to wrap us up and ask if there are any additional questions as we close.
Thank you, Patsy. I really hope that you will think about joining us on the May 1st Adult Career Pathways Institute. This will be our first, and we hope it's not going to be the last. So bring your questions, bring your great ideas and strategies, and be prepared to share. I really would like to thank Cathy, Grady, and Ron Fleischmann for doing all of the great work, and also for Liz Andres for being the curator of that resource library at the Atlas website. Thank you all, and we will be here if you have any other questions. Otherwise, I'm glad to see that we are ending on time. Thank you.